A little bit about the history of this recording. A few years ago I used to play professionally as a musician in Melbourne and managed to get to see a lot of Australia as a touring musician, and I came back to Melbourne and played regularly with a group of terrific musicians. And after doing that in the 1980s I moved to Perth and again set up a couple of bands there and played with people in Perth. So recently what I thought I'd do was put together this two separate groups of musicians. So I'm talking about long-term friend Paul O'Brien, who I've recently done an album with, and Paul plays 12 string, sings, is a great songwriter, and we've written a lot of stuff together. So the bulk of the material on this is largely from my ideas, but often Paul will help me to refine the ideas. And we got together with a good friend of ours, James Blackwell, who's a terrific singer and slide player. He's known for his dobro and slide playing. You'll hear a lot of that on the album as well. He has a property down in a place called Denmark in the south of Western Australia. So what I did was, first off, I determined whether it was feasible to record there, and Jim said, well, we've got an old schoolhouse on the property. He's got about, I think, 35-40 acres there, and he said he was using it as a shed. Would that be feasible to record in this particular shed come schoolhouse? So Paul and I had been recording with a gentleman called Dave McClooney, who's an engineer come producer who works here in Melbourne. Fantastic guy, Dave. And I said to Dave, can we do it? And he said, of course you can, provided you get the right equipment. So what we did was we went to Perth and we hired some equipment there. We got some other equipment from Albany, which is the nearest major town to Denmark in Western Australia. And we set up a recording studio on Jim's farm. So we then invited John Crosby, who's a terrific musician who came along, who can also play guitar, sing, the usual thing, and also on this he largely played bass and did a really good job. And if you add that to the project, we also asked Marcus Sturrock, who I used to play with, and he played with John too, back in Perth. And Marcus, something of a, I guess you'd call him a virtuoso guitar player, fantastic guitar player. So he said he'd come along. The last piece of the puzzle, certainly over there, was Jeffrey Maxwell, who's a drummer I played with for many years in Perth, and he's played with all sorts of different people and toured around. So we had a group of high quality musicians who got together to play, and essentially we went to Jimmy's place in Denmark, and we were there for a week and we just played night and day. We stopped to eat and the rest of the time we were in the studio. Had an absolute ball, did largely my material, although there's a couple of songs of Paul O'Brien's on it that are exclusively his, but we put our little bent on it, so to speak, and one song of John Crosby's. And we've come up with what I think is a pretty good album. And I must mention too that when we got back here we sort of sweetened the tracks a little bit, and I felt particularly on there was 3 tracks, one Rainy Day in Melbourne Town, another one called The Snake, and a further one called Things Can Go Wrong, that needed something extra. So I contacted local musician David Jones, who's a fantastic keyboard player, and David added his touches to it and he did a really great job. Hope you enjoy the album. There's more information as you check around, but if you do like it, please share it, send it to your friends. Quite proud of the work, and hopefully it might get us enough going so that we can do it again, because it was certainly one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life, going down to Denmark and just spending that whole time just playing music.